security. We are a full service security shop, right from the pre-assessment work, from design architecture to day-to-day operations. And today, I represent the Carolinas in terms of my operations here. We obviously have a big footprint in New England, the last year in the Southeast, big expansion. Today, we're very excited to talk about one of our strategic partners, Varonis. And with every partner, we take a strategic role in terms of not just a resale, right? So we're one of their 6 delivery partners in North America. So that full life cycle with Varonis. And for those of you that may not be familiar, obviously, Varonis is a leader in the space of data governance. So that whole cycle, right, whether it's discover, classification, protection, who has access, where is it, that predominantly any regulation, whether it be security or privacy driven, is going to be important. So not only a fantastic product, but a way that you can take a subjective assessment and turn it into something very quantitative with results, and something we can help you with. And to that note, I want to introduce another resource at Atlantic that leads our pro services and virtual CISO office, another former co-worker, Charles Rooney. So Charles, if you'd like to talk briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Ali. Chuck Reardon here, and Ali's correct. I'm here to representing our ProServe and vCISO services and governance risk compliance assessment services. And the idea of data governance, data discovery, data management is big, right? Is a big component, big piece of our total cybersecurity model, if you will, right? One of the key domains, and Varonis plays a big part in that. So as you, I'm excited to see what they bring to the table. And Ali, thanks for inviting me. And I'll, if you don't mind, I'll sit back and listen, and let's get the Varonis thing going on and see what we'll do from there. Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks, Chuck. It sounds like a good idea. So let's pass it to Dan Hatter, and a quick introduction on Dan Hatter, as he's an SE at Varonis for 2.5 years. He's out of Glen Allen, Virginia, loves to cook and watch football, which tells you this is a great event for Dan. I'm reading some of his notes that says that his team didn't make it to the Super Bowl. So I'm assuming he's a Washington football team, but maybe he can reveal that. But he's going to show us how he can help all of the customers win off the field, regardless of the Super Bowl results. So Dan will pass things off to you, and I guess we'll grab an apron and a drink or something like that. So looking forward to it.
Hey guys, this is Brandon Lapatina from Varonis. Dan's having some technical difficulty for the moment, but we hope to have him join here in just a second.
But no, definitely Washington football team fans. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about winning off the field. If you guys listen to local radio up here in the DC area, you probably heard that before. So am I able to just jump in and start talking about Varonis right now? Or are we waiting on anything?
No, we're waiting for you. Let's go.
All right, awesome. So let me put, I have a couple slides here, but it's not really going to be a presentation. It's just to give me something to look at besides my face. Let's see. Let me know. Can you all see that? Big stack of money.
We see the bills.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Well, no, I appreciate everybody giving me the opportunity to talk here. I did see a couple familiar faces, also some familiar names, some customers, some folks that both own Varonis and have gone through our free POC. But what we wanted to talk about is really how we treat our data, right? How we secure our data. And traditionally, what we've done is we've built walls around our data, things like firewalls. It's been the security conversation. But what if we treated our data like dollars? And what I mean by this is when we think about a bank doesn't just have a security guard and a camera at the front door. Right? So they are tracking the money as it goes in and out of the vault. They know how much money is in every drawer, making sure that, the bank manager doesn't have a stack in his drawer. So we want to really start to look at our data as the most important asset to the company and be able to track it as it goes in and out of the organization, as users access this data, as maybe people shouldn't be accessing this data and taking this money out of the vault. And so Varonis is software based, and we go out and integrate with these different data repositories. So I do have a slide here to illustrate that. And so we do support on-prem Windows, Windows in AWS or in Azure infrastructure, any on-prem enterprise level NAS, so things like Isilon or NetApp. And if we look at the center pinwheel, what we first want to do is start to go out and classify our data. So we have tons of sophisticated classification rules for things like PCI, PHI, PII, all built in. You just flip a checkbox on and we're off to the races as far as classifying this data. And once we understand where our sensitive data is, then we want to understand who has access to it. So we're going to be pulling in users and groups from Active Directory, and we're also going to be mapping those users and groups to the different data stores that we're monitoring. So understanding who has permissions to this data. We're also pulling in access activity. So if we think about every move, add, create, delete that goes on in an environment, we're recording those and creating a complete audit trail. Active Directory telemetry. So we interface with on-prem Active Directory as well as Azure Active Directory, and we see authentication events, group policy objects being modified, people being added to sensitive groups like maybe the domain admins group. And then finally, perimeter telemetry. So tying all this into one platform, and when I talk about perimeter telemetry, we've talked about the data, we've talked about Active Directory, but now also VPN. DNS, SolarWinds and Sunburst breaches lately. A lot of that was done through command and control server. So understanding where these DNS requests are going outside of the organization. And then also web proxies. So when we think about a kill chain and protecting our data, someone comes in, they do reconnaissance. So maybe something like a brute force attack happens against Active Directory. Varonis helps detect that. We also see them start to touch data, and we're building profiles for all your users. So we understand what data they normally touch on a normal basis. We understand which device they touch this data from. But if they touch this data abnormally, we'll be able to alert you on that. And then exfiltration. So once they grab that data, where are they going with it? Maybe something as simple as Gmail. We start to put together a very mature investigation very quickly through the platform. And so you can see how we sort of map to these different use cases. If we understand where our sensitive data lives, the crown jewels, if you will, we can start to protect it. We understand who has access to it. We can start to lock it down. This is also important when we talk about reducing the scope for things like ransomware. We also are able to meet our compliance very easily, right? So when our auditors come in for all these different types of sensitive data, the PHI, the PCI, the PII, we're able to run reports and show them that we know exactly where this data lives, exactly where people have access, and we have privacy by design because of it. And then finally, all these metadata streams are coming in. We have these powerful machine learning. I think of it sort of like the head on the robot or the transformer, starting to put all these pieces together and alert you. So when something does happen, you don't have to comb through all these logs. You're getting an alert via email. If it's something like a ransomware alert, even, we can start to talk about PowerShell scripts that we can automate. We can disable accounts. We can lock down devices. We can log people off their sessions to stop ransomware 17 files in as opposed to 17 terabytes in. And then also when it comes time to find out whether it was something like ransomware or we had a compromised account, or maybe someone's put in there 2 weeks and we need to figure out what they're doing with their data, we can easily put together an investigation. So we're talking minutes, not hours or days, to put these investigations together. And I always liken it to, CSI. We've all seen the cork board with the strings of yarn and the thumbtacks and the newspaper clippings. And sometimes, some of the things that Varonis does, you have a point tool for, but really getting rid of the disparate tool set and bringing everything together. So putting this investigation, getting to a mature investigation, I should say, is very easy and quick. And with that, we do offer the POC free. The proof of concept is all run on your infrastructure, and it's something that an engineer like myself would install for you. So it's all white gloved. And while we take you through that, we're going to give you insight into all this information as far as where the sensitive data exists, who's accessing it. We're not only going to identify the problems, we're going to show you how to fix it. We have over 50 patents around automation regarding fixing broken permissions and reducing global group access for organizations. And these are the things that we're going to show you when we turn the lights on. That being said, if you want to reach out to myself or one of the other Varonis folks on the call, we'd be happy to talk a little bit further through this. We can also do a live demo if you still like to sort of see how the product works before deploying it in your environment. But really over the course of probably 30 to 60 days, we want to show you value. We're going to be there holding your hand as we do it. We want to make sure that you're not tossed a product and expected to figure out how to use it. And what I've found in my experience is that customers, once they see what we can do, they're surprised at the capabilities of the platform. They think that we're only maybe a classification platform. And then also they start to become almost, I hate to say it, but dependent on the information that we're providing them, right? It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you have this platform available to you and you're able to easily go and find out the information we can provide, it's hard to get rid of it. And I'll end there, but thank you so much for your time, guys. I'm going to go and look for this food that's been delivered here, and hope I can follow along and cook up something delicious.
All right, great. Thanks, Dan. With that said, I'm just going to open it up to any questions. We have a little time before we get started.
Yeah, hi, Dan. This is Chuck Reardon with ADS.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
Fantastic.
So, right. So one of the things when we come into a customer's environment and do an initial assessments of their current posture, maturity state, typically we ask the questions: do you have a data classification scheme? And the answer is always yes. Oh, yeah. We absolutely have a scheme. So can you demonstrate it? Right? Can you prove it across the depth and breadth of your various repositories, structured or unstructured? And it's like the deer in the headlights. So then we have to go through and do a really meticulous sampling, right? This is just to understand data classification, period, right? So because data classification then feeds into DLP and then IAM, right? If I want to do RBAC or ABAC, controls to access to those data. So let's take a medium-sized company, 5,000 employees, 3 different locations and 1 primary data center. How does Varonis work? Because in that kind of environment, you're going to have data on endpoints. People are going to keep data local, which they should or shouldn't, but they do. We all do. And then you got various data stores of replication, backup, restore, and then we have some cloud apps going on, Office 365, SharePoint, et cetera. How's Varonis work? And just the hard, I think the heaviest lifting is going to be the discovery and identification of where those data is, what that data is, and who has access to that data. How do you do that?
Sure. No, great question. And I will just start by kind of describing our proof of concept infrastructure, right?
Okay.
So we typically ask for 3 virtual machines. The first one's going to be the security platform itself, so the application running. And then during a POC, we'll also install SQL locally on that box. We do not store any sensitive data in our database. We only have pointers to it. So we know where it exists. We know what type of data it is. You can analyze it through the platform. So we can actually open up a document and show you exactly where every social security number or credit card is. But that would be an interactive login. It's not stored in the platform itself. Our second piece of infrastructure is for a platform called Solar on Zookeeper. And Solar is basically taking events out of our SQL database and flattening them. And this helps with the analytics portion of the product. So we're pulling all these events in. How do we use those events? How do we get access to them? We're dropping them on this machine, flattening them. And I've literally seen 22 million events in a large organization, probably about 5,000 users, large Isilon, an Active Directory being monitored, pulled up in under a minute. And that's really magical to me as far as security standpoint goes and trying to get answers for the boss, right? The third machine here is going to be the collector. The collector is going to do all the heavy lifting. And so I believe I still have the platforms up on the screen here? So when we talk about the collection of events. All the events are going to be coming into the collector. For Windows file servers, we're going to be using an agent. So we do deploy an agent to do, it's a filter that sits on top of the kernel, much less resource intensive than native Windows auditing. And that feeds those events back to our collector. For Office 365, takes about 20, 30 minutes to set up an API there. Then we enter that information, a secret ID, an app ID, and a tenant ID into Varonis. We are a Microsoft partner. We don't compete with any of their solutions. So that's a very easy setup as well. And then as we start to talk about different places that data exists, whether it's the Windows file servers, SharePoint on-prem, or network attached storage, we would like a collector in every geographical location. So if we have a data center and we have some offices with some Windows file servers, it probably makes sense to put collectors in different locations. We are not an endpoint solution. This is something to remember as well, right? We want to detect before data gets to the endpoint. We want to lock it down so users aren't taking it back to their device. We can do a couple different things to help out with that, just not locking down permissions, but also alerting when we see this atypical access or access to sensitive data. And the classification rules for all these platforms are out of the box. It's nothing you need to design. So once again, customer doesn't know where their sensitive data is. We're not going to ask them to come up with a plan or a policy to figure this out. We're going to be able to easily turn on what we know to be these different compliance regulations. Something else to mention with Office 365 is everyone's using Teams right now. Teams is just a client. Teams is just a client for SharePoint Online, OneDrive, Azure, and Exchange Online. Varonis supports all 4 of those platforms. What a lot of our customers don't know is that every Teams creates a SharePoint site. Every time you create a channel, you can have up to 30 for every team. That's an additional site. And you have to typically go to 3 different places in Office 365 in order to understand permissions. You're in the Azure admin portal, you're in the SharePoint Online admin or OneDrive admin, and then also there's a Teams admin portal. So Varonis is bringing all those permissions together in a single place to be able to understand who has access to what, where those share links are, or where maybe people are creating public teams and there's all users access. So I know a lot of this, we started with where the infrastructure sits. So we want a collector as close to the data as possible. For a POC, one collector as centrally located as possible, we can definitely get by with. We're happy to ingest as much data as you give us. I think our typical POC is probably around 60 terabytes. And with that, I'm going to stop and let me know if I didn't answer your question, I missed anything, because I'm happy to get more specific.
That's pretty good. Now, I'm assuming you need credentialed access in order to do that, to get the permissions, from AD. Do you go into AD with credentialed access, or how's that?
So, yep, we would just need a regular user for Active Directory, and that regular user would need to be a part of the event logs reader group. And once we're dropped in that event logs reader group, we can connect, collect 30 something events just out of that. So there's no privileged access needed for the Active Directory event auditing. For something like the Windows or the on-prem enterprise storage, the recurring theme there is going to be backup operator and power user. A lot of times for the Windows devices, we'll get added as a local admin just for the POC, but that could be backed down as well. And that's just because we will need to install the agent. So that's what that credential helps out with. For enterprise storage, like the Isilon and the NetApps, we're also using the native OS for the event auditing. So something like OneFS or F-Policy is just forwarding those events over to our collector.
Awesome. That's all I had. Are you guys getting ready to cook?
Yeah, I'm sure I put someone to sleep by now. I don't know.
No, it's good. It's good information. Thank you very much, Dan.
No, I appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Chuck, for those questions. If anyone else has any questions, they can feel free to unmute or drop them into the chat. And if you think of anything during the cooking session, reach out to your Atlantic rep, or if you don't, feel free to send it to me and I can, share it with the appropriate person and they can get back to you. I think we have some hungry attendees. I'm going to pass the baton over to Joel from Homemade now. Joel, are you there?